Welcome to this special 2024 election coverage episode of Kankakee Podcast, presented by Nana's Bakery and Cakes, Pathfinder, and Stafari West Avenue. I'm Jake LaMore. Before we get started, just to remind you that early voting is now underway if you choose to cast your ballot before November 5th. For more voter information, you can visit KankakeeCountyClerk.com. Today, I'm speaking with Phil Nagel, candidate for Illinois State Senate in the 40th District. We'll discuss his background, policy priorities, and vision for the district as he seeks your support in this upcoming election. Welcome, Phil.
Thanks for having me on, Jake. I really appreciate it.
Or do you prefer Philip? I see Philip and I see Phil and I see, I don't know if there's a preference or you just go by both.
Well, most people call me Phil, but I will say Philip probably looks better on signs.
That's true. All of your signs do say Philip. I don't think I've seen a sign that says Phil on it now that you mention it.
Maybe re-election, we'll talk about that.
Let's talk a little bit about you and just where you come from, what your background is, all that fun stuff. I know talking on the phone with you the other day, you live in the Braidwood area,
I do,
right?
Yes.
Okay.
Live in Braidwood, born and raised, born in Peatone and raised in Manteno. I went through school, grade school, high school in Manteno.
I forgot about that.
Yes.
Okay.
Right after I graduated high school, 9/11 hit and I joined the Air Force and I went to serve my country for, the duration, quite a while afterwards, right? So I spent the 4 years after high school working as a crew chief on F-16s, so essentially launching and recovering F-16s in defense of this country. And after that, I came out and I started working. Well, let's go backwards a bit.
Yeah, I am curious. I know we've got more important things to talk about, but still, I'm curious just about the time you served. That was during the Iraq War, I take it?
Yes.
Okay. And so, where were you stationed at? Were you stationed here, or did you go anywhere around the world? Or
so I was stationed in Utah. So we were in charge of Homeland Security, essentially, a domestic. So from Iraqi freedom, obviously, when you have a geopolitical war going on around the world, you have units that deploy over to that area, and then you have units that stay in defense of our own country, and that's where I was for the entirety of that war. My cousin, on the other hand, he actually was a Marine at the time. He enlisted just before I did, and he was over in Afghanistan and Iraq for the better part of his career until he got out. And so, we have a pretty long line of service to our country. My grandfather actually served in World War II, which he had some pretty incredible stories before he passed on. And my oldest son, he actually just commissioned in the Army a little bit over a year ago.
Oh,
so he's a second lieutenant in the United States Army right now, which
amazing.
Is pretty incredible. It really is, because I think it's, as a father and as parents, our hopes are that our kids are going to, accomplish more than we did, right? We want a better life for them than we had. And to be honest, I'm very excited where my oldest son's at. And my youngest son is studying engineering and astrophysics at Texas A&M. So I could say they're both, doing very well for themselves. And as a parent, couldn't be more proud of them both.
Yeah, sounds like you got good genes. So how far up did you get in the Air Force then? Did you get as far as your son? Are you a little jealous?
So I did not get as far as my son. And so it was actually pretty incredible. I was just enlisted. So after my enlistment, 4 years, I ended up getting out and I went to serve or to work locally as a first responder and a chemical operator. But go backwards a little bit. So my son, I actually was his first salute. So he went to Olivet. He went to the ROTC program there at Olivet here locally, which was pretty incredible. He was in the ROTC division. And when he commissioned, I actually got to be his first salute, which was, I'll be honest, pretty emotional as a father. It was incredible.
Tears,
moment.
I'm sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very proud moment for me. And to see my son, like I said, do better than what I did.
Yes.
And so extremely proud of everything, all the hard work he's accomplished in life. And even to go back to my military side. So for his mom. So I was actually stationed in Utah, and I met his mom when, right after I turned 21. I knew her for about 3 months, and I proposed, and we got married. That was 20 years ago. We just celebrated our 20th anniversary last November, our 21st annifound coming up. So
congratulations.
That was
happy anniversary.
Right? It was 3 months.
That's a big deal. You know?
Got very lucky with her. I found the right woman. It only took 3 months for me to figure it out.
Man, you got really lucky, I would say. So going on from, you said that you worked for a chemical, some type of chemical company out of the military?
Yeah. So when I got out of the Air Force, I came back and I worked for Lyondell Chemical as a chemical operator. And they also have a fire division, a fire brigade on sites where I worked as a firefighter, EMT, hazmat, rescue technician, and things along that line. So I've been there for about 20 years now.
Oh, wow.
So it's local company. We're doing, we take natural gas and we turn it into plastic. So for everything from phones to laptops to saline IV bags in medical institutions, cars, essentially anything you see, water bottles with plastic is what we create over there at Lyondell, which is a truly astounding process.
So where does your interest in politics come in? Have you had any other experience in politics? I know this is your second time
it is
running for Senate, but before your Senate races, anything as far as government related?
No, I like to think of myself as a fresh mind, independent thinker. Before that, I did not have any experience in politics. And I don't say experience, I had no involvement in politics, right? Because I think most people out there can, if they want to get involved, I encourage them to.
Yes.
Experience isn't needed. It's more life experience. It's not experience in politics. So if you have something that you're passionately want to change, or if you have an idea that you believe is going to help the betterment of your community and the people in your state, I encourage those folks, if you're willing to do the work, get involved, because we need fresh ideas. We need a new generation of folks that want to get involved in politics, because the longer we have folks that make this into a generational seat, right? We have family dynasties that continue on the same seats over and over and over again. That's what's wrong, right? We need to encourage newcomers into to get involved. So I think where I came into play, what got me going was a lot of, and I hate to say, it sounds cliche in this, but property taxes, right? They're killing me. They are absolutely killing me. The cost of living is out of control, and we're never going to get this under control. I mean, we are a sanctuary state. I'm not sure if you've heard all the articles that, we have illegals being busted in from Kankakee and being dropped off in Kankakee County, LaPorte, Chicago. We have allocated out of our budget. Our budget was $53 billion this year. They put $1 billion aside and are prioritizing the illegal immigrants and you can support it or not. But my position is, I believe we need to be helping the people of Illinois first. We need to prioritize where we're spending that money. And I mean, if you really look at it, our budget's gone from, I want to say, like about $35 billion back, 5-6 years ago. We're at $53 billion. We're on a very unsustainable path right now. And if we don't get it under control, I mean, essentially inflation is tied to spending, right? As long as we have out of control spending, inflation is going to keep going up. So we need to really get our budget under control. We have to, because like I said, I know a lot of folks in Park Forest, their property taxes have doubled in the last couple of years. Mine have gone up quite a bit as well. And, I go to the grocery store now. I went to Sam's Club the other day. I think I spent $274 for a couple of, I wasn't say bags, but boxes essentially, right?
Sure.
And it's not sustainable. My dad retired and he could not afford to live in Illinois. So he went down to Florida. One son's down in Texas, and this actually, it pains me to say, but he's in college. He called me up and he's like, "Dad, I'm probably not coming home. I'm probably going to stay down here. The cost of living is way cheaper." And he said, it's just a more friendly environment. And so my other son's headed down to Tennessee. So right. I want to make this a more affordable state to live in so that, when your parents retire, they're not, okay, we can't afford to live here. We're going to stay here. I grew up here. I have roots here. My family, what's left of them that haven't left the state yet are, I want them to be able to stay here as well. I have a brother that's a teacher in Beecher, and he actually called me about a month ago and he said, I'm thinking about moving back in to mom's house. And his property taxes went, I want to say from like $4,000 or $5,000 to $9,000. He's in a townhouse in Manteno. And he can't afford it, right? He's a teacher. Our teachers are being just decimated. We have kids. I used to think, what's going on with our next generation, right? They're living at home longer. They're living at home. But then I realized they can't afford to move out of
I can
their parents'
attest to
house.
that. Support for Kankakee Podcast's 2024 election coverage comes from Nana's Bakery and Cakes on Broadway and Bradley. It's more than just cakes and cupcakes. It's the perfect treat for every occasion. Find them on Facebook and Instagram and visit nanascakery.com. But I'm curious, as we're talking about all of this, the big thing talking about right now is property taxes.
Mm-hmm.
And in Phil Nagel's mind, what is the way to try and lower those property taxes? What are some ways in your mind that you're in support of that would help alleviate the property taxes?
So there's a couple big ones right off the bat, right? So we gave $1 billion allocated towards folks that should not be here or haven't entered the country legally, right? We take that away off the budget right off the bat. That's an extra $1 billion. Now you start to comb through, where are we, where's the wasteful spending at? For instance, a lot of folks around this way are very familiar with the Goshen EV battery factory, right? So the state of Illinois has given them over $536 million in tax subsidies to that company to come in here. And there's a lot of geopolitical, talking points to this as well.
Yes, there is.
Which I'm not.
We don't have to get into that.
Yeah, I'm not going to go into. Mine is the cost of it, right? Do the taxpayers really want to foot that bill, or are there more important things to them to spend their money on, right? Because at the end of the day, this is taxpayer money, right? And I think what really, because Manteno is my hometown, I think what really set off an emotional reaction to this plan initially was they didn't go out and ask the people. They didn't say, hey, we have an idea. We want to bring in a factory and we want to give them $500 million to do it. What do you guys think? This is in your backyard. And I think that's where the government gets it wrong. I think you need to engage with the public, the people that live in that community, and you have to have full transparency, right? You have to get ahead of this before, if you have an idea, bring it to the people, because ultimately, as a government servant, you work for the people. And I think that is more important than anything, because everyone has their own ideas. And at the end of the day, the majority should win, right? And so if you have a really compelling idea or something that you want to bring a business in, then bring it to the people. Let the people decide. I think these backroom deals are starting to really aggravate most of America and in specific Illinois.
So with the property taxes, you would be in support of getting rid of the funding that's going towards the incoming migrants, correct?
Absolutely.
And yeah. Mm-hmm. And so what would you address that issue at all then with the migrant situation, or what would you do about that? Because that would still be a problem regardless of whether we're giving them money or not.
No, absolutely. So we're obviously, you probably know, we are a sanctuary state, right? Yes. So this is a self-induced problem. We need to rescind that decision to become a sanctuary state. We have actual laws on the books right now for immigration, for legal immigration. And a lot of folks, my wife her grandfather is actually from Mexico. My wife is Hispanic, and her entire family, they have deep ties in Mexico. And so all of them support the same idea that there's a legal pathway to citizenship in Illinois, not say Illinois, but in the United States, right?
Yes.
So we need to get back, and we just have to follow the laws that are on the book and stop trying to skate around them, right? And it's more of a virtue signal than anything else. And I think most of Illinois and most of America agree with that position. I think that we need to prioritize the living conditions. I mean, we have veterans that live on the street right now. We have them all over the place. We have a huge homeless crisis in this country, and specifically in like Chicago has a very bad homeless situation going on there. And let's get that under control before we start, shelling out taxpayer money to folks that shouldn't be here, right? And if they have an asylum claim or something along those lines, there's a process to it. But again, the process is being completely turned upside down right now, and unfortunately, we are the ones that are paying the bill for it.
So what are some other things that you would like to bring into the 40th district that would help your constituents?
Okay, so right now we have school districts, right? Our reading levels, we have kids that are graduating that are reading at, I would say 8 to 10% roughly are reading at like 8th grade levels, and they're graduating high school, some at 4th grade levels. Our education system is, we have a lot of money that we're putting into it, but we're not seeing the results coming out of it right now. And I think that's a real problem. I think we really need to focus on getting our kids educated, and there's a few different pathways to it right now. So schools obviously are always looking for more money because they have a lot of unfunded mandates that are placed on them by Springfield, essentially, right? And we need to end those unfunded mandates, and we need to really get down to what's going on inside the school districts. Why aren't these kids actually reading at grade level? Why aren't they performing math at grade level? Why are we prioritizing things that may not be as beneficial? Because I guess at the end of the day, when my son went there, he got a good education. I ended up homeschooling him for a little while as well. My youngest one went to the Illinois Math and Science Academy because he was strictly on, math and science. He wanted to go into astrophysics. And so he did that for a year. And then he actually said, Dad, he was interested in starting college. And I said, you're 16. And he said, well, there's a program at Olivet. So my youngest one actually started college full-time at Olivet when he was 16. He did 2 years full-time at Olivet, went to campus and everything just like a normal college student. And so he was able to do that, but it was under the guise of homeschooling because and our homeschooling laws in Illinois are very, very lucrative. They are. Yes. I really like those because they give a lot of freedom. I think we need to give those same types of freedom, the school choice freedoms. I think that some of those provisions have been let to expire in Springfield. We need to bring back choice for parents. And you know what? I think through choice, we'll build an atmosphere of competitiveness, right? If you say, Mom, you can take your son or daughter here and, you bring them there and maybe you're not liking the results you get. Well, now you can take them to a different area, a different school. Maybe you get better results there. And that's going to push on the schools to become more competitive and really teach the kids as it gives more power. It empowers the parents, right? Because if you want your son or daughter to learn math and science, then those schools are going to have to teach and they're going to have to up their game. It's like a competitive market, a business market, right? You have to have competition in order to build out a better product. And so the same thing goes with schools. The more competition you have, right now the schools aren't worried about losing any kids, right? Because they have to go there essentially. I mean, there's little ways around that, but you need to offer parents the freedom to bring their kids. If they're willing to put the effort in, if I'm willing to say, I'm going to drive my son down to Olivet a half hour, 30, 40 minutes every single day and pick him up, then that should be my prerogative. And outside of homeschooling, I think that's really genuinely your only choice at the moment to do that. So I think we need to really strengthen those types of laws in Springfield to give school choice back to the parents.
Support for 2024 election coverage on Kankakee Podcast comes from Pathfinder, a full-service creative and marketing agency in downtown Kankakee with a mission to provide strategic storytelling to their clients. Pathfinder's inventive business services and pioneering campaigns help organizations find their own path and carry out their vision. Learn more by visiting yourpathfinder.io. Now, I know a topic of discussion every election actually doesn't even have to be an election season, but is abortion. And I know that that's something that you wanted to cover today on what your stance on abortion is.
Yeah, so it's incredible. And I like to joke around with my wife. So never having done politics before, it's a whirlwind when you get into it and you start to see commercials. I used to watch commercials all the time and I'm like, oh, I can't believe that. I mean, look at this guy. He's an evil person. You just see the worst side of people being portrayed on TV. And I'm like, wow. And it almost, after you see it enough times, you start to believe it. And then I got involved and I see these commercials pop up on me and these flyers. And I'm like, wow, that's not who I am. And it's amazing because, for the instance, the position on abortion, this, they have commercials, they have flyers. Nagel wants to take away your women's healthcare rights, which I don't. He wants to, ban rape or abortion in case of rape, incest in the mother's life. I don't. I'm actually public on that position. I have been public for a long time on that position. But again, in politics, it just seems like everyone is so disingenuous, and it's not about the truth. It's about what sells or evokes an emotional response from the listener or the reader. And that's what's wrong with politics, right? We have to get on the truth. You know what? If you have a voting record or if you're strong on a position, then, let's debate that position. Let's not try to slander somebody on a false a false made up position. And to be perfectly honest, I am for complete bodily autonomy. I actually believe that the government has no place inside any type of medical decision a mother makes for her child. I think the most sacred bond in the world is between a mother and her child, and the government should have no place there. So I think I kind of go a little even beyond that, because it's important to have that freedom from the government.
So you actually are not against abortion, is that what you're saying? Or you're against just certain aspects of it?
I have a very unique position that doesn't really belong to either party. I believe that you should have the ability to make your own medical decision. And I will say this, I believe in life. I do genuinely believe in life, but I would legislate in the sense that anything that medical decision that's made by a woman or anybody in that matter is completely independent of any type of government directive. And so I think you're allowed to have your opinion. I believe you're allowed to have your own beliefs, but I believe it's important that no matter how I feel, that we maintain that wall between the government and any medical decision. Because I won't say, I guess the best way to say it is, I don't know that I like the government's track record when it comes to medical mandates. Military-wise, they don't have the best track record. So I think we don't, and I was in the military, obviously.
Yes. So you have that experience.
Yeah, right. In the military, you just do whatever you're told from a medical standpoint.
If I'm not mistaken, they can say yes or no on whether you get a procedure or not.
Yes, they have that ability. They essentially, this is a funny story. So when you go to boot camp, and I was 18, obviously, brand new to all this. They have footsteps. So when you go through boot camp, they have footsteps, little outlines of feet on the ground. And you take a step forward and you have people on both sides of you, nurses or what have you, and they give you a couple of vaccines. You take another step forward, they give you more vaccines. I mean, it's a literally conveying line. And no, you don't have the ability to say no, right? You're essentially signing up. And yeah, I mean, it's true when you say you're giving your life to the government, to the military.
It's true, yes.
And I think I signed up for that. But I think there's that where I volunteer for that, I think that's where that needs to stop. The people don't volunteer for that, right? It's important that we maintain our medical freedom from our government in every element of it. In 2021, I believe it was, I authored a bill called the Parental Medical Choice Act. And I had my local state representative, David Walter, at the time, file it for me. It went to the Rules Committee. And essentially what that did was it took away the governor's ability under any circumstance to mandate any type of medical treatment on any child, K through 12, or through higher education. And I think that's important. Again, like I said earlier, it should be the parent's choice. And I'm not trying to get in the weeds and say I believe in this or this. No. It's not my response. It's not my prerogative to tell you what you can do with your child. It's your prerogative. And I think that should be honored. I mean, we've seen even a couple of years ago, Illinois has some of the strongest healthcare right conscious acts, religious exemption type stuff laws on the books in the entire country. And those freedoms are starting to be eroded now. So there was an amendment put in to start to move those freedoms back. And I think that, again, is a very dangerous path to start on. We should not be trying to erode our religious freedoms and our medical independence from the government. We should be trying to protect them and strengthen them at all times. So I think that's something it's very important to me. It really is. There's a lot that we can change in this state and to make it better for the people. And I think that's kind of what's really driving me to get involved in politics.
I know another hot topic right now is the Safety Act, the Pretrial Fairness Act. And what is your stance on that? And what would you do if you get elected and something crosses your desk about any type of legislation dealing with that? Because there's a lot of back and forth still of trying to amend it or repeal it constantly, it seems like. I just constantly see it in the news and talked about. So I was curious what your take was on that.
So I'm against the Safety Act, and I have been very public on that even through the 2020 campaign. I've never hidden my opinion for it. This was a very controversial bill, and it could have been avoided. It really could have been avoided. It passed in the middle of the night. It got gutted and then put into a different bill, and they bypassed the 3 readings rule because they took a bill that had already get passed. I want to say it was an amusement park bill, safety bill. I believe that's what it was. But I mean, you get confused at some point because they just kind of push them into any bill that's already passed so they don't have to read it on the floor. And that's, again, the people of Illinois are not served well by when you try to pull these votes at 3 a.m. and then you have, they'll come. At the end of the day, this was a virtue signaling process, right? You had folks that wanted the left to go really hard left and let folks out of jails, let them out early. Essentially, there's no repercussions for crime, right? You commit a crime and you go into jail. My oldest son actually worked at the Kankakee jail, and he can tell you a lot of stories about this. But when you remove consequences for actions, essentially that's what the Safety Act did. You're going to only promote more crime, right? Because there's no consequence. And so I believe that I would vote against it. I would have voted against it right away. I believe that you have to be able to make the hard decisions and maybe unpopular at times, but I know there was a lot of back and forth on that when it happened, but ultimately you have to listen to the law enforcement. You have to listen to you have to be able to make the determination: is this going to make the people in Illinois safer, or is it not? And look at Cook County; it's a prime example of it. We have more shootings, more deaths in Cook County than we've had in the war in Iraq before, or Afghanistan in a single weekend. Obviously, their position on law enforcement is weak at best.
So, what is your position then on safety in the 40th district then? If not the Safety Act, then what? What initiatives do you support for safety?
So body cameras were one thing that came out of it that I support. And I think most law enforcement agrees with me on that. I think they offer a level of protection for both the person, the offender, and the police officer. I think that was a good idea. I will say that where they missed the mark on the Safety Act with this is this wasn't funded. Right, this was another unfunded mandate that Springfield pushed on local law enforcement.
They have to fund it themselves.
Yes, there was a lot of those types of mandates that were pushed through in the safety bill. Again, this is what we have to get away from, right? And this is where, if you actually do the process correctly, if you go through and you don't try to pass these bills first thing, 2 a.m., and you go through the 3 reading process and you go through the witness slips for, the public has the ability to chime in on this. You start to get the feedback from the district. Okay, this may work, this may not work. This is where they completely miss the mark, right? We have to be able to listen to the feedback about what's working, what's not working, if we have the money to fund something like this. And you have to be, at the end of the day, be able to make an adult decision about it, right? You may not get everything you want, but maybe you get a little bit of what you want. And again, this is things are pushed through Springfield so quickly that it's doing the people of Illinois a disservice.
So what would you do as far as the economy is concerned, and, bringing relief to families and things like that? I mean, we kind of touched on this a little bit, but what are some other things that you would like to do for the economy in the 40th district?
So obviously inflation is cost of living is out of control, and it's tied to inflation. And that's ultimately tied to cost of, to our budget, essentially spending. And this all resonates back. If we want to lower the cost of living, which is what we have to do, if we want to lower property taxes, we have to be able to attract businesses to this state. Right now, we have a pandemic of businesses leaving the state. Why? Because their taxes are out of control in the state. They can't afford to operate in here. And we have to attract those folks back. If you look at different states, I mean, for instance, like Texas, right? They have an influx of business coming to their state because, for instance, they don't have a state tax. They are very business friendly. These are ideas that we need to incorporate here in Illinois if we want to attract businesses to come back. And then, obviously, as we attract businesses, you start to split that tax burden, because now you have a growing economy, right? You'll be able to, maybe that budget looks a little bit different now because you're not, footing the bill on all the taxpayers. Now you have, bigger corporations coming up here, bringing jobs with them, bringing money to add it to our tax revenue stream. So there are simple solutions to addressing these issues. Obviously, not giving tax subsidies to companies that, to be honest with you, I don't know that EVs are necessarily in demand here in Illinois. I say that from a perspective of I do like Tesla. I have solar panels on my roof. I believe in clean energy. I genuinely do. I don't know that EVs are necessarily in demand in Illinois though, but I don't have anything against them. I really don't. I think they're really cool cars. And when I was down in Texas earlier this year, me and my son were driving Teslas around. I mean, they're pretty interesting, but
they're interesting to say the least, right? However you feel about them, they're interesting.
Yeah, the look is pretty incredible on some of these things. And I mean, Musk has his hands in a lot of technology out there. Pretty incredible guy and interesting to watch. But ultimately, we need to get our budget under control. We have to stop putting our thumb on the scale for businesses. We have to put our thumb on the scale when it comes to bringing down regulation in Illinois, bringing down the tax burden, which is going to be directly affected by the amount of money we spend in our budget.
Speaking of regulation, can you think of any direct regulations that you can think of that you feel are unnecessary and a burden on some business owners? Are there any in particular you can think of?
Well, I can go back to some of the, so I hate to bring it to this, but this is something I did want to talk about was PPP loan, right? So we had, during COVID, we had businesses shuttering their doors left and right. And I mean, I'm sure you can attest to that. I'm sure you've seen it down here.
Yes.
My wife had a friend that she started going to a yoga studio down here in this area, and they closed because they applied for a PPP loan first, and they didn't get qualified because they weren't the first ones. They weren't high enough in the line to get any type of funding. They closed their doors. We legitimately had, I want to say NBC reported $5 to $6 billion in PPP loan fraud in this state alone. We have to put our small businesses first before we put these politicians, like that PPP loan deal that they put out there, right, during COVID. That should have been off limits to every politician in the entire country, not just Illinois. But the sad fact of the matter was, it wasn't. And so we had politicians dipping their hands into this, and they were getting the first crack at all this money that was coming out by the federal government while we had businesses close, like I said, left and right. So I think that's where we start, right? And I think it's just aligning to doing what's right and getting the politicians' hands out of the money, out of the cookie jar.
Support for this 2024 election episode of Kankakee Podcast comes from Stafari West Avenue, providing contemporary cuisine with an international flair on Southwest Avenue in Kankakee. View their menu and order online at stafaricafe.com. How does transparency work in your mind? What are some initiatives that you can introduce or help support when it comes to transparency in the government in Illinois?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. This is one of my first positions I took and went public on. And we have the technology nowadays. I don't know if have you ever looked at like CRM platforms? I mean, we have the technology to look at so deep into different levels of organizations and spend. We have government can audit any of us. I mean, they just hired another 80,000 IRS agents. So what about we put a platform together? So this budget that gets passed right now, if you want to see what's in the budget, you go on to illinoisgov.com and you search for about 1 or 2 days to find the right amendment to see. And then you read through 1,000 pages, 10,000 pages, whatever that looks like anymore in these bills to try to figure out what it says. Why not put a platform together that we can easily identify and go, click through. I mean, there's easy platforms to do this. You can go in there and you can see exactly where every dollar is going to based on simple searches, right? Right now, illinoisgov.gov or Illinois, their government sites lose me at the moment, but it is the most difficult site in the world to manage and get through and to find what you're looking for. And that's coming from me, and I spend a lot of time on it. So I think we spend more time making these resources or putting resources into making a platform that's simple for the normal American to get on and say, okay, well, I want to know what money is allocated to our schools, my school specifically. And you should be able to type that in just like in Google. It brings it up. This is where the money's going. This is what's going to our pension fund. This is what's going to the kids' math. I mean, we have the ability and the technology. AI is a huge step forward for us. We could really drive transparency across the government. But I will say most folks in politics don't like that, obviously, because then you're going to start critiquing them on where our money is going and really holding them accountable for what they're spending their money on. And so I will say, I will attest there's not an appetite to do that in Springfield. There's not an appetite to do that in DC, but there is here. And I have an appetite to do that because we need transparency. I can bring it to this FOIA request. FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act, right?
Yes.
I did a lot of those when my son went to the Illinois Math and Science Academy, and I did them. And then eventually they just stopped responding. I said, well, how is this? No response. I ended up going for a review to the AG's department. And after, I want to say 5 or 6 months, I lost my case. And I said, well, how can that be? I'm just a parent. I want to get information from a school. Nope. They labeled it as a fishing expedition, which I don't know how that really works. But ultimately, the people need transparency through our government. And the government has become very, very good at hiding that information in many different ways. And I do suggest we start putting resources into creating a program, a platform where people can go on there and get that information. It should be public 100% all the time, every day of the week, every hour of the day. And if you want to know exactly what's going on, exactly how much this person's being paid and this politician's making, you should be able to go on there and actually look at what are they trading, right? When you if you want to put yourself into the public arena, your life is 100%, should be 100% transparent, right? If they're investing in stocks, why can't we know about it? There's a lot of darkness inside government right now. And until we are able to shed light on it, nothing's going to change. And obviously, our living conditions are direct response from, condition of what they're doing.
Yes. How do you, continuing the conversation about transparency, how do you plan on bringing transparency to your office if elected? How would you try and provide that transparency to your constituents?
So I guess that's something that I would say I haven't thought about in that sense, because I'm essentially an open book. What people want, questions that I'm asked, I give the same answer no matter where I'm at. I genuinely believe that it's important. That's why I've been public on so many of my opinions on things. And so if somebody wants information, I'll be honest with you, I'm going to support it, and they're going to get it back. They're going to get that information very quickly. If they need help to get information from another organization, I mean, to the extent I can, I will definitely be engaged in that process. I think the American people and the people of Illinois deserve the right to know what's going on in their government. And if I could be a bridge to help bring that transparency to the people of the 48th District and the people of Illinois, I would be glad to do it. And I'll probably be doing a little bit of it on my own as well, because I think until we get the truth out there about what really happens behind closed doors, I mean, I can tell you story after story about what I've learned in running for politics and how the process works, and why. I'll tell you why. I know why Republicans don't win seats in Illinois. And I could tell you why. People feel disenfranchised when they're not able to get involved, and when people in the government, right? So when they can't actually, reach out to a senator or a state rep or a county board person, when they reach out to them and they get no response, which I get that all the time, they feel disenfranchised, and they're like, okay, well, I just give up. The government doesn't work for me. Essentially, they get the mentality that they work for the government. And to all extents, that's almost where we're at nowadays, right? I mean, when this country was founded, it was founded on the idea that people would volunteer for their government for service to their country, and they'd go in, they'd serve their country, their neighbors would help take care of their family farm, and then when they're done with their service, they'd come back. We have divulged from that to an extent now to where the American people work for our government, which that should not be the case. And I think that's where that's the fundamental idea that we need a change in this state. We need to bring government back beholden to the people instead of vice versa.
So what are some other initiatives or things that you're for that you want voters to know about?
Other initiatives, I will say, this one I haven't actually gone public with. This one is, but I do talk about it a lot when I walk door to door. I think it's very disingenuous for our state politicians or federal politicians, but I'll keep it more at the state level, to get insurance and all these luxuries and benefits that aren't awarded to all the people in the state.
So you don't think the government officials should get these benefits with their service?
I'll do you one better than that. If they want them, fantastic. But
you got to pay for them?
No, not even that. I'm not even going to go there. I will say they get whatever the people of Illinois get. We suspend all pensions, all insurances, up until the day that the people that they represent are awarded the exact same benefits. For medical, if the politicians have to pay for this much for deductibles, we should be awarded the exact same thing. And right now, it doesn't feel like most people in this country in Illinois are one medical emergency away from losing their entire retirement, or they're, filing bankruptcy. I believe that's the last statistic I saw. One medical issue, you could file bankruptcy and it could ruin your life. And bankruptcy is the number one reason for why, most parents break up. And then what does that lead to, right? A fatherless family. So you could really break this down to a very deep level. So I don't think that there's no appetite in Springfield, obviously, for them to figure out healthcare in this state. And I think if you remove their healthcare, mine as well, if I'm fortunate enough to win, and you guys can have it back as soon as you guys figure out this healthcare issue for the rest of this people in the state of Illinois. Because when I have a friend, his name's Bob, his son got in a horrific accident, and he's just now actually able to get out of the wheelchair, and he's actually walked unassisted for the very first time after over a year. And he called me the other day, and his son got kicked out of physical therapy a couple of times now this last week and a half because of insurance problems. So his son isn't able to progress at the way he should, because now our government insurance companies have got involved in it. That should never be the case. Not for the richest country in the entire world. We should do better for the people of this country, better for the people of Illinois. And to be honest with you, I think the people deserve to be first, not the politicians. And that's what I'm going to be really working towards when I get in. So
you would go in to insurance to what? Bring it back to more of a private sector? Or what would you do about the insurance and the government's involvement in it?
So I will attest to this. I'm not obviously you can start with saying a couple of things, right? The medical industry and the pharmaceutical industry actually have a lot of problems, right? They're able to charge premiums that are unheard of. And for people going in for any type of procedure, I'm sure you can attest to it as well. If you go in for a minor surgery, the chances of you knowing what you're going to pay prior to that surgery are, slim to none, right? Most people go in for a procedure or for any type of medical treatment, and they come out and they're like, okay, well, let's see what that bill looks like in a month when it comes in. And you look at it, you're either like, fantastic, it came, it was low, or you're like, wow, I'm going to have to get a payment plan for this. There's no way I'm able to pay for this. That needs to end. That has to end. How do you drive prices down? And there's a way to drive prices down and at the same time increase treatment or make the treatment better, right? And it's through being competitive. Right now, they do not have, and no medical industry, no medical hospital, no pharmaceutical, they don't have to be competitive. They don't have to, because they're not competing with anybody. They're competing with themselves essentially, because they're protected by many laws inside the federal government. So we need to make that more competitive, right? If you want, I guess you look at it like this, right? You look at Sprint, T-Mobile, I believe they merged. Now you have Comcast or AT&T, right? So how do those companies how do you get better product out of these companies for a better price? You put them in direct competition with each other, right? So now the prices inherently will go lower as the quality goes higher, because you're trying to attract your market, right? Your total addressable markets can be determined by your product and the cost of that product. So the same thing needs to apply to the medical industry, pharmaceutical industry. Right now, the markups on some of these pharmaceuticals are just, they'll blow your mind. And I'm sure most people in this, listening will attest to that. So let's put them in more of a competitive market. They should be abiding by all the same antitrust laws as every other company does. And they should have to compete for your business by offering lower prices for a better service. And once we can get something like that through, people are ultimately going to be the beneficiaries of it.
Okay. Well, Phil Nagel, running for State Senate in the 40th District. Thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else that you want voters to know? They can learn more by going to Nagel4Senate.com. And there's a lot of information there about your campaign. Is there anything else?
Yeah, I'd like to thank you, first of all, for having me on today. And I guess I'd like to leave your listeners with this question and this is a famous quote, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? And essentially in Illinois' case, the question is a little bit bigger than that. Are you better off now than you were 20 years ago? I can tell you right now, we have property taxes that are out of control. We have, double-digit increases. I know some places in Park Forest that have gone up by 100% on their tax bills. And we're not going to change the status quo until we start getting the people that have been part of the problem out of that mix. We need to start voting for new people, a new generation of ideas, and I believe that's going to definitely resonate with a lot of people. I guess that's the best way to say it.
Thank you, Phil.
Thank you.
That concludes our conversation with Phil Nagel, candidate for the Illinois State Senate in the 40th District. We hope this episode has provided helpful insights into his goals and approach to representing our community. Please note that Phil's opponent, State Senator Patrick Joyce, was not available for an interview, but I do encourage you to learn more about his campaign at electpatrickjoyce.com. Special thanks to Nana's Bakery and Cakes, Pathfinder, and Stafari West Avenue for supporting this election coverage. Be sure to check out more episodes of Kankakee Podcast as we continue to bring local stories and election updates.